Why was she still there at 8:15 in the evening, alone in a building that had emptied hours ago? Alina Brennan's fingers ached. 6 hours of typing, digitizing classified documents from the 1980s, and her neck had that particular stiffness that comes from staring at screens too long. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. The archive room at Naval Special Warfare Command was silent except for the soft clicking of her keyboard. She should have left with everyone else, but something about the work felt meditative. Each document she scanned was a window into a world of shadows. A world her father had lived in before he became just a memory and a folded flag. She was 25, auburn hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, gray-green eyes the color of the ocean before a storm. Her father's eyes, though she barely remembered him well enough to know that. People noticed her beauty but never commented on it directly. She preferred it that way, invisible, unremarkable, just another archivist doing her job. Alina stretched, her spine popped. She glanced at the clock and wondered why she kept staying late. Maybe because the work was easier than going home to an empty apartment. Maybe because somewhere in these files, in these windows into the past, she might find something, anything, about the man who'd lifted her onto his shoulders when she was small. The man who'd taught her to hold a rifle when she could barely reach the trigger. Breathe in. Let half out. Hold, squeeze. Don't pull. She'd been 4 when Commander James Brennan died in Iraq, 21 years ago, a lifetime. Her memories were fragments now, strong hands, the smell of his dress uniform, his laugh deep and genuine, and that one crystal-clear moment with the rifle, his hands over hers, his voice patient and calm. The official report said IED, improvised explosive device, wrong place, wrong time. One of thousands killed in those desert wars. She'd accepted it because what else could you do? You couldn't question death. You couldn't argue with a folded flag and a condolence letter from the president. But lately, something had been bothering her. She couldn't name it exactly, just a feeling, a whisper in the back of her mind that grew louder with each document she scanned. Because these files, these classified operations from the 80s and 90s, they told a different story than the official narratives. They spoke of missions that never happened, of deaths ruled accidental that looked anything but, of secrets buried so deep they'd fossilized. Alina pulled up the next batch of documents. Operation Greyhound, dated October 1985. Somalia. She clicked through the pages. Standard reconnaissance mission. 2 operators. Objective. Document Soviet weapons cache. She was about to move on when something caught her eye. A name. Commander James Brennan. Her father. Her hand froze on the mouse. She read it again. October 1985. That was 18 years before he died. But why had she never heard of this mission? She scrolled through the report. Her heart rate picked up. Another name appeared. Franklin Ashford. Call sign Ghost. She'd heard that name before. When she was young, after her father died, people would visit sometimes. Men with hard eyes and quiet voices. One of them had been called Ghost. She remembered because the name had frightened her. But the man hadn't been frightening at all. He'd knelt down to her level, looked at her with sad eyes, and said something she'd never forgotten. Your daddy was the best man I ever knew. I promised him I'd watch over you. That promise doesn't have an expiration date. She hadn't understood what he meant then. She'd been 4, drowning in grief she didn't have words for, but she remembered his face, the weight in his voice, the way her mother had cried when he left. Alina kept reading. The mission report was heavily redacted. Black bars covered most of the operational details, but fragments remained. Soviet weapons, massive cache, intelligence handler identified only as Mr. Sterling. The operation classified at highest level, orders to leave weapons in place for tracking purposes. Then nothing. The file ended abruptly. No follow-up reports, no after-action review, no record of what happened to those weapons. It was like someone had taken a pair of scissors and cut the story in half, left it bleeding on the table. She searched the database. Operation Greyhound, Nothing. She tried different search terms. Somalia 1985, James Brennan, Franklin Ashford, Sterling. Each search came back empty except for that single report. One document, alone, like a gravestone in an abandoned cemetery. But there was something she'd learned in her 2 years working in this archive. When something was heavily redacted, when a file stood alone with no supporting documentation, when a mission disappeared from official records, it usually meant one thing. Someone didn't want it found. Eleanor's pulse quickened. She copied the file to a secure drive. Then she did something she'd never done before. She accessed her father's personnel file. She'd avoided it until now. Too painful, too final, but now she needed to see it. The file opened. Photographs, service records, commendations. She'd seen most of this before. Boxes in the attic at her mother's house. But buried deep in the file was a personnel note dated March 2003, 1 month before her father died. Commander Brennan has requested immediate reassignment from DEVGRU operations. Request denied. Psychological evaluation recommended. Commander expressing concerns about operational security breaches within command structure. Eleanor read it 3 times. Her father had tried to leave, had expressed concerns about security breaches. 1 month later, he was dead, killed by an IED in a country where SEALs weren't supposed to be operating according to public records. The building's security lights flickered. She jumped, looked around. The archive room suddenly felt too quiet, too empty. She was alone with ghosts and secrets, and for the first time she wondered if maybe some secrets wanted to stay buried. Her phone buzzed. A text from her mother just checking in. Haven't heard from you in a few days, everything okay? Eleanor stared at the message. No, she wanted to write. Nothing is okay. Dad tried to leave his unit. He was concerned about security breaches. He died a month later. Do you know anything about this? But she couldn't send that. Her mother had suffered enough, had rebuilt a life after losing the man she loved, had raised Eleanor alone, working 2 jobs, never complaining. She deserved peace, not more questions about a death that happened 21 years ago. Eleanor typed back, all good mom, just buried in work, love you. She shut down her computer, grabbed her bag, but before she left, she took one more look at her father's photograph in the personnel file. He was 39 when it was taken. Strong jaw, storm gray eyes, the kind of face that belonged to someone who'd seen things and carried them quietly. What did you know, Dad? She whispered to the screen. What did you try to warn them about? The photograph didn't answer. It never did, but Eleanor felt something shift inside her, a decision forming like ice crystals. She'd spent 2 years digitizing other people's secrets, cataloging missions and operations, being the invisible archivist, the girl nobody noticed. Maybe it was time to notice herself. She left the building. The San Diego night was cool, fog rolling in from the ocean. As she walked to her car, she didn't see the man in the dark sedan across the street. Didn't see him lift a camera and photograph her leaving. Didn't see him pull out his phone and make a call. She accessed Operation Greyhound, the man said quietly, and Brennan's personnel file. A pause, then, do we have a problem? Not yet, but if she keeps digging, we might. Then make sure she doesn't keep digging. Use discretion. Her father was a hero. Let's not make her one too. The line went dead. The man in the sedan watched Eleanor's car disappear into the fog. Then he started his engine and followed at a careful distance, because some secrets were worth protecting, and some people who asked questions needed to be reminded that curiosity could be dangerous. Eleanor drove home unaware, but somewhere deep in her subconscious, in the part of her that was her father's daughter, a whisper of warning stirred. The kind of warning that had kept James Brennan alive through 100 missions. The kind that might save her life in the days to come. If she learned to listen. 3 days passed before Eleanor realized she was being followed. She'd been raised by a military family, had absorbed certain habits without knowing it. Situational awareness, pattern recognition, trusting your gut when something felt off. Thursday afternoon, leaving work, she noticed the same dark sedan she'd seen Wednesday and Tuesday, always parked at different spots, never conspicuous, but there. She didn't react, didn't look directly at it, just got in her car and drove home like normal, but her heart rate picked up. Someone was watching her, someone who didn't want to be noticed. That night she couldn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about the Operation Greyhound file, about her father's request for reassignment, about secrets and lies and the weight of questions that had no answers. At 2:00 a.m. she made a decision. If someone was watching her, they already knew she'd accessed those files. There was no putting this particular genie back in the bottle. She needed help, but who could she trust? Franklin Ashford, Ghost, the man who'd promised to watch over her, the man who'd known her father, who'd been on that mission in Somalia. If anyone could tell her what Operation Greyhound really was, it would be him. Finding him wouldn't be easy. He disappeared after that visit when she was 4, but Alina was an archivist. She knew how to research, how to follow trails through bureaucracy and documentation. Friday morning she called in sick, then she started digging. It took 6 hours. Military records, property databases, vehicle registrations. Ghost had been careful, had covered his tracks, but nobody could disappear completely, not in the digital age. She found a property deed in Oregon, a cabin in the Cascade Mountains, purchased 15 years ago under a trust. The trustee's name was a shell company, but buried in the incorporation documents was a signature. Franklin J. Ashford. Alina booked a flight to Portland that evening, rented a car, drove 3 hours into the mountains following a GPS that kept losing signal. The cabin was at the end of a dirt road, surrounded by pine trees and silence. Smoke rose from the chimney. A truck was parked outside. Lights were on in the windows. She sat in her rental car for 10 minutes, working up the courage. This was crazy. Driving across the country to confront a man she barely remembered about a mission that happened before she was born. But something in her wouldn't let it go. Her father had tried to warn people, had died a month later. That wasn't coincidence. That was cause and effect. Alina got out of the car, walked to the cabin door, knocked. Silence. Then footsteps, the door opened. The man standing there was 68 but looked younger. Lean, weathered, with eyes that missed nothing. She recognized him immediately even though 21 years had passed. Some faces you never forgot, especially the ones that knelt down to your level when you were 4 and made promises about watching over you. Alina, he said quietly, not a question, a statement, like he'd been expecting her. You know why I'm here. Ghost stepped back, held the door open. Yeah, I know, come in. The cabin was exactly what she'd expected, sparse, functional, a rifle mounted over the fireplace, maps on the walls, books about tactics and survival, the home of someone who'd never truly left the battlefield. Ghost poured 2 cups of coffee without asking if she wanted one. They sat at a worn wooden table. He looked at her with those sharp eyes. Operation Greyhound. You read my mind. You've got your father's eyes, means you've got his instincts too. You found something in the archives, found his name on a mission that doesn't officially exist, started asking questions. Someone noticed. Now you're being followed and you're scared and you need answers. Alina stared at him. How do you? Because I've been watching over you like I promised your father. I'm the reason you got that job at the archive. I'm the reason you've had a quiet life these past 25 years. And I'm the reason the people who killed your dad haven't come after you. The words hit her like a physical blow. What? Ghost set down his coffee. His expression was hard. Your father wasn't killed by an IED. He was assassinated, murdered by people who wanted to keep Operation Greyhound buried. I've spent 21 years making sure they had no reason to look at you. But now you've gone and kicked the hornet's nest. Alina's hands shook. She set down her coffee before she dropped it. "You're telling me my father was murdered. For 21 years I thought." "I know what you thought. I'm sorry. But I couldn't tell you. As long as you didn't know, as long as you didn't ask questions, you were safe. The moment you accessed those files, you stopped being safe." "Then tell me now. Tell me what happened in Somalia. Tell me what Operation Greyhound was. Tell me why my father died." Ghost was quiet for a long moment. Outside, wind moved through the pine trees. A clock ticked on the mantel. Finally, he stood, walked to a closet, pulled out a box, set it on the table. Inside were files, photographs, documents that shouldn't exist. "October 1985, he began. "Your father and I were in Somalia, sent to document a Soviet weapons cache. We found it. 240 AK-47s, 67 RPG launchers, enough ammunition to fuel a war for 6 months. We photographed everything. Sent the intel back to our CIA handler, a man who called himself Mr. Sterling. He pulled out photographs. Alina saw weapons, crates, serial numbers. Sterling told us to leave the weapons in place, said they needed to track the distribution network. Standard counterintelligence operation. Made sense at the time." Ghost's jaw tightened. 3 years later, those same weapons showed up in conflicts across Africa. We started seeing them in after-action reports, asking questions. Your father couldn't let it go. He dug deeper. Found out Sterling wasn't running a counterintelligence operation. He was running an arms trafficking network, using CIA resources to supply warlords and militias, making millions. Alina felt sick. "My father found out. That's why he tried to leave his unit." "He didn't just find out, he gathered evidence, was planning to expose the whole operation. Sterling and his people couldn't let that happen. Your father's death was made to look like enemy action, but it was a hit. Professional, clean. Sent a message to anyone else who might have been asking questions." "Why didn't you expose it? You knew." Ghost's eyes were haunted. "I tried, went to the Inspector General, the FBI, nobody would listen. The evidence had disappeared. The documents I'd saved were ruled inadmissible. Sterling had too much protection, too many people in high places who benefited from his network. I was a SEAL with a conspiracy theory and no proof. They threatened to have me committed, said I was suffering from PTSD, paranoid delusions." He leaned forward. "So I made a choice. I couldn't get justice for your father, but I could keep his daughter alive. I went underground, kept tabs on you from a distance, made sure Sterling's people knew that if anything happened to you, I'd burn their entire world down. It was the only leverage I had." Alina's mind raced. Her father, murdered for exposing corruption. And this man, this ghost, had spent 21 years protecting her, alone, in silence. Where's Sterling now? "Dead, heart attack, supposedly. 5 years ago, but his network didn't die with him. The operation continued. Different faces. Same business. They're called Obsidian Solutions now. Private military contractor. Legitimate on paper. But underneath they're still running guns, still profiting from conflict, still burying anyone who asks too many questions." "You have proof?" Ghost tapped the box. "Everything your father collected, everything I've gathered over 2 decades. Names, dates, transactions, it's all here, but it's not enough. We need something current, something that proves Obsidian is still operational. Otherwise, it's just old history, classified documents that officially don't exist." Alina looked at the files, her father's handwriting on some of the pages, notes in the margins, evidence of a good man trying to do the right thing. "What do we do?" "We," Ghost shook his head. "There is no we. You go back to San Diego. You forget about Operation Greyhound. You live your life. I'll handle this." "Like you've been handling it for 21 years. The words came out harsher than she intended. Ghost flinched, but she didn't apologize. "You just told me my father was murdered for trying to expose corruption, that his killers are still out there, still profiting, still hurting people. You think I'm just going to walk away? Your father made me promise to watch over you, keep you safe." Maybe he wanted you to teach me, train me, make me strong enough to finish what he started. Ghost studied her. In his eyes she saw calculation, assessment, the same look her father must have had when evaluating operators for his team. You don't know what you're asking. This isn't paperwork. This isn't digitizing files. This is dangerous. People will try to kill you. They already are. You said yourself, I'm being watched. I kicked the hornet's nest. There's no going back. Silence stretched between them. Outside, an owl called. The wind picked up. Ghost finally nodded, once, sharp, like a commander making a tactical decision. If we do this, we do it my way. You follow orders, you train, you learn. You don't go off half-cocked with good intentions and no skills. Because the people we're going after, they're professionals. They've killed better operators than you, better than me. Alina felt something ignite in her chest. Not excitement, not eagerness, something colder, harder, like steel being tempered. When do we start? Ghost stood, walked to the rifle over the fireplace, took it down. It was a Remington 700, her father's weapon of choice. She knew because she'd seen photographs, read his service record. This wasn't just any rifle. This was his rifle. Your father taught you to shoot when you were 4. You remember the basics. Breathe in, let half out, hold, squeeze. Ghost handed her the rifle. It was heavier than she expected, felt foreign in her hands, but also right, like coming home to a place she'd never been. Then we start now, because teaching you to shoot is the easy part. Teaching you to survive, to fight, to think like an operator, that takes time, time we might not have. Alina wrapped her fingers around the rifle, felt the cool metal, the worn wood. Her father had held this weapon, had trusted it with his life, had killed with it, had protected people with it. Now it was hers. The weight of that inheritance pressed down on her shoulders. I'm ready. Ghost's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Respect maybe, or sadness. No, you're not, but you will be, because you're James Brennan's daughter, and that means something. They walked outside into the cold mountain night. The stars were brilliant overhead, no light pollution this far from civilization. Ghost set up a target at 100 yards, handed Alina the rifle. Show me what you remember. She settled into position, felt awkward, wrong, but she breathed in, let half out, held, squeezed, the rifle kicked. The sound echoed across the valley. The target showed a hit, off-center, but a hit. Ghost nodded. Not bad for 21 years of not shooting. We'll have you at 500 yards by the end of the month. Alina worked the bolt, chambered another round. What about exposing obsidian? One thing at a time. First, I teach you to survive. Then we plan. Then we act. Your father rushed in with evidence and good intentions. Look where it got him. We're not making that mistake. She fired again, closer to center this time. The rifle was starting to feel less foreign, more like an extension of her body. Ghost watched her for a long moment, then he spoke quietly. Your father and I made a promise to each other. On the USS Wasp, after that mission in Somalia, he showed me your picture. You were 3 years old, red hair, big smile. He asked me to watch over you if anything happened to him. I laughed it off, told him nothing would happen. Ghost's voice was rough now, raw. But he knew. Somehow he knew. And 18 years later, when they killed him, when I got the call that James Brennan was dead, the first thing I thought about was that promise. That little girl in the photograph who didn't know her daddy wasn't coming home. Alina lowered the rifle, turned to face him. In the moonlight, she could see tears in his eyes. This man who'd spent 2 decades carrying grief and guilt, who'd protected her from shadows, who'd honored a promise when it would have been easier to walk away. You kept your promise, she said softly. You watched over me. Now let me honor my father. Let me finish what he started. Ghost wiped his eyes, nodded. Then we train hard every day until you're ready, until you can survive what's coming. Alina raised the rifle again, fired. This time dead center. The target rang in the darkness, a bell tolling, a declaration. She was Alina Brennan, daughter of a SEAL, student of a legend, and she was done being invisible. The night seemed to hold its breath. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled. The sound carried across the valley like a warning, like a promise. Training had begun. What does it take to break someone who's already broken? 6 weeks of training. That's what Ghost said it would take to get Alina ready for basic field work. Shooting, hand-to-hand combat, tactical thinking, survival skills. She thought she knew what hard work meant. She was wrong. The first week nearly killed her. She woke at 4:30 a.m., ran 5 miles through mountain trails in the dark, then strength training, then rifle work, then hand-to-hand, then tactical drills, then scenario planning. Ghost pushed her past every limit she thought she had. When she wanted to quit, when her muscles screamed and her lungs burned, he'd say one thing: "Your father never quit, neither do you." And she didn't, because Ghost was right. She had her father's blood, his stubbornness, his refusal to accept defeat. On day 3, she collapsed during a run, face in the dirt, gasping, ready to cry. Ghost stood over her and spoke quietly. "The people who killed your father, they're counting on you being weak. They're counting on you giving up. Every time you quit, they win. Every time you stand up, you honor him." Alina pushed herself off the ground, finished the run. That night, every muscle ached. She could barely lift her arms. But she felt something else too, something like pride. Like maybe she was becoming someone her father would recognize. The shooting came easier. She'd always had steady hands, good vision, natural patience. By week 2, she was consistently hitting targets at 300 yards. By week 4, 500. Ghost taught her to read wind, calculate for distance and elevation, account for temperature and humidity. He taught her that shooting wasn't just mechanics. It was meditation, becoming one with the weapon, with the moment. "Your father could hit targets at over 1,000 yards, Ghost said one afternoon. They were on the range, Alina prone behind the Remington 700. He had a gift, not just skill. Gift, like the rifle was part of him. Alina looked through the scope. A target at 700 yards, wind from the left, cool temperature. She calculated, adjusted, breathed. Did he ever miss? Once, Somalia, different mission from Greyhound. We were extracting a source, hostiles on our 6. Your father took the shot, 1,100 yards, moving target. He missed by 2 inches. The round hit the target's shoulder instead of center mass. Guy lived long enough to call for backup. Nearly got us killed." Ghost was quiet for a moment. "Your father couldn't forgive himself for that, carried it for years. Said 2 inches was the difference between success and failure, between life and death. He spent 1,000 hours on the range after that, making sure it never happened again." Alina squeezed the trigger. The rifle spoke. 3 seconds later, the spotter scope showed a hit. Dead center at 700 yards. Ghost nodded. He'd be proud. But shooting was only part of the training. Ghost taught her close quarters combat, how to fight when the bullets ran out, how to use whatever was available as a weapon, how to disable someone twice her size. The first time they sparred, he put her on her back in 3 seconds. She got up. He put her down again, and again, and again. "You're small," he said. "That's an advantage. You're faster, more flexible. Lower center of gravity, but you have to think different. Can't overpower someone, have to outthink them, use their size against them." Alina learned, slowly, painfully. Her body became one big bruise, but she learned. By week 5, she could last a full minute before Ghost took her down. By week 6, she almost had him, would have if she hadn't telegraphed her move. "Better," Ghost said, helping her up. "You're thinking now, not just reacting." The evenings were for tactical planning. Ghost spread maps and files across the cabin table, taught Alina how to read intelligence reports, how to identify patterns, how to think like an operator instead of an archivist. "Obsidian Solutions has a headquarters in Alexandria, Virginia," Ghost explained. "But their operations center is in North Carolina. That's where the real business happens, where they coordinate shipments, where they keep their records. Elinor studied the satellite photos. A compound, high security, multiple buildings. We need to get inside. We need proof first. Hard evidence that they're still trafficking weapons. Then we need to extract their records. Then we need to get out alive. In that order. He pulled out a file. Personnel records on Obsidian employees. Thomas Park, former Delta Force, did 3 tours in Afghanistan, left the military 5 years ago. Now he's head of security at Obsidian. We served together once. He's a good man, or he was, don't know what he is now. Elinor looked at the photo. Asian man, early 40s, hard eyes. You think he'd help us? I think everyone has a price. The question is whether that price is money or something else. Thomas always had a code, always cared about doing the right thing. If he knew what Obsidian really was, maybe he'd turn, maybe. That's a lot of maybes. Ghost smiled. It wasn't a happy expression. Welcome to intelligence work. Nothing's certain. Everything's a calculated risk. The art is making sure the odds are in your favor. They planned for 2 more weeks, identifying targets, mapping security protocols, finding weaknesses in Obsidian's operation. Ghost had been watching them for years, had files on every major player, photographs, movement patterns, habits. You're obsessed with them, Elinor said one night. They killed my best friend, took him from his daughter. Yeah, I'm obsessed. Obsession keeps you sharp, keeps you alive. The day you stop caring is the day you get sloppy, and sloppy gets you killed. Elinor understood, because she was becoming obsessed too. Every morning she looked at her father's photograph. Every night she read his old mission reports, learning who he'd been, what he'd believed in. She was starting to see him not as a distant memory, but as a person, a warrior who tried to do the right thing in a world of shadows. 8 weeks after she'd arrived at the cabin, Ghost declared her ready. Not expert, not elite, but competent, dangerous enough to survive, smart enough not to get them both killed. You've come a long way, he said. They were on the range. Elinor had just hit a target at 900 yards, her personal best. But understand something, training isn't combat. Real operations are messy, unpredictable. You follow the plan until the plan falls apart. Then you adapt, think, survive. Elinor chambered another round. When do we move? Soon. I've got a meet set up with Thomas Park. Neutral location, public place. We feel him out, see if he's reachable. If he is, we use him. If he's not, we go in hard. And if it's a trap? Ghost checked his weapon. Then we fight our way out, or we die. Those are the only 2 options once you commit. Elinor thought about that, about dying. She'd been so focused on training, on getting stronger, on honoring her father, that she hadn't really considered the possibility of not surviving this, of ending up like him, a folded flag and a condolence letter. But maybe that was okay. Maybe some things were worth dying for. Justice, truth, making sure the people who'd murdered her father couldn't hurt anyone else. She looked at Ghost. This man who'd given up everything to keep a promise, who'd lived in exile for 20 years, who was willing to risk everything now because she'd kicked the hornet's nest. Why are you really doing this? She asked. You could have stayed hidden, kept your head down, lived quietly. Why risk everything now? Ghost was silent for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was rough. Because I'm tired of hiding. Because your father deserved better than what he got. Because 21 years is long enough to carry guilt. And because maybe, just maybe, I can keep one more promise. Not just to protect you, but to help you become what you're meant to be. He met her eyes. Your father believed in something, believed in honor and truth and doing the right thing even when it cost everything. He passed that to you. I can see it. Every day I see more of him in you, not just his eyes, his spirit, his refusal to accept injustice. That's worth fighting for, worth dying for if it comes to that. Elinor felt tears prick her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. Seals didn't cry, warriors didn't break. When do we leave? Tomorrow morning. We meet Thomas in 3 days. Until then, we stay sharp, stay ready, and we don't look back. Because once we start this, there's no stopping until it's finished." That night, Alina couldn't sleep. She stood outside the cabin, looking up at the stars. The same stars her father had looked at. The same stars that had watched him die in a desert halfway around the world. She touched the dog tags around her neck, his tags. Ghost had given them to her after the first week of training. "These were your father's," he'd said. "I took them before they shipped his body home, kept them all these years. They belong to you now." Alina clutched them tight, felt the cool metal against her skin. Tomorrow she'd leave this mountain, leave this place of safety and training, step into the world of shadows her father had inhabited, the world that had killed him. But she wasn't the same girl who'd arrived 8 weeks ago. That girl had been soft, uncertain, afraid. This girl could shoot 1,000 yards, could fight, could think tactically. This girl was dangerous. This girl was her father's daughter. She went back inside, packed her gear, cleaned her weapons, prepared for war, because that's what this was, a war against corruption, against people who thought they were untouchable, against the darkness that had swallowed her father. Ghost found her in the armory. "You ready?" Alina looked at him, this legend, this ghost, this man who'd become her teacher, her protector, her link to the father she barely remembered. "Yeah, I'm ready." He handed her a vest, tactical gear, black, professional. "Then suit up. Tomorrow, Alina Brennan stops being a name in an archive. Tomorrow you become an operator." She put on the vest, felt the weight of it, the reality of what they were about to do. No more training, no more preparation, just action, just commitment, just the cold calculation of people who decided that some truths were worth bleeding for. Ghost smiled. It was the first real smile she'd seen from him. "Your father and I used to do this before missions. Sit in silence, prepare mentally, accept that we might not come home, but also commit to doing whatever it took to complete the mission." Honor meant everything to him, more than life, more than safety. Alina sat beside him, in the quiet cabin, with the mountains outside and the weight of history pressing down. "Then let's honor him. Let's finish what he started." They sat in silence, two warriors, one old, one new, both carrying the weight of a dead man's dreams, both ready to pay whatever price justice demanded. Tomorrow the war began. How do you know when someone's lying? When they meet your eyes too easily. The coffee shop in Richmond was crowded. Lunch rush. Business people and tourists and students. Perfect cover for a clandestine meeting. Alina sat at a corner table, her back to the wall, watching the entrance. Ghost was across the street in a parked car. Overwatch. Insurance. Thomas Park arrived exactly on time. That alone told Alina something, military precision. He was still an operator at heart, even if he wore civilian clothes now. He spotted her immediately, walked over, sat down without asking. "You're Brennan's daughter," he said, statement not question. "You're the man who works for the people who killed him." Thomas didn't flinch, didn't react, just studied her with eyes that had seen too much. "I work for Obsidian Solutions, private military contractor. We provide security services. Nothing illegal about that. Unless you're trafficking weapons. Running the same operation Sterling started 40 years ago. Unless you're killing people who ask too many questions." Now he reacted, a slight tightening around his eyes, a flicker of something, surprise maybe, or fear. "You don't know what you're talking about." Alina leaned forward. Operation Greyhound. Somalia, 1985. Soviet weapons cache left in place. Sterling using CIA resources to supply warlords. My father found out, started gathering evidence, was planning to expose the whole network. Then he died in Iraq. Convenient timing. Thomas was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was carefully neutral. "That's ancient history. Even if it were true, which I'm not confirming, Sterling's been dead for 5 years. Whatever operation he ran died with him. Did it? Alina pulled out a photo, recent, showed shipping containers being loaded at a port, Obsidian Solutions logo visible. This was taken 3 months ago, Port of Wilmington. Those containers were supposed to have agricultural equipment, but they actually had rifles, RPGs, ammunition, bound for militia groups in Sudan. Same pattern Sterling used, same routes, same buyers. Thomas looked at the photo, his jaw worked. Where did you get this? I have my sources. The question is, what are you going to do about it? He slid the photo back across the table. You're in over your head. You're asking questions that will get you killed. Go home. Forget about this. Live your life. Like my father should have lived his. Thomas stood. I'm sorry about your father, genuinely. He was a good man, but this conversation is over. He turned to leave. Alina spoke quietly. Your file says you have a daughter, 8 years old. What would you want someone to do if she lost you? If someone murdered you and got away with it, would you want her to forget, to live quietly? Or would you want her to fight? Thomas stopped, stood frozen for 5 seconds. Then he turned back, sat down. When he spoke, his voice was different, lower, tired. What do you want from me? The truth, are you part of it, the trafficking? No, I'm head of security. I protect facilities, personnel. I had no idea about any weapons trafficking until 3 months ago. I saw something I shouldn't have. Started asking questions. Got told to mind my business. But you didn't. No, I didn't. I've been documenting everything since then, building a file, but I don't know who to trust. Obsidian has connections everywhere. Do CIA, Congress. If I go to the wrong person, I end up like your father. Alina felt something shift, hope maybe, or just recognition that she'd been right about him. Ghost said you were a good man, said you had a code. Thomas's eyes widened. Ghost is alive, Franklin Ashford. He's been watching Obsidian for 20 years, waiting for a chance to take them down. Now we have that chance, but we need someone on the inside, someone who knows their operations, someone who wants justice as much as we do. Thomas was quiet, calculating risk versus reward. Finally, he pulled out his phone, showed Alina a photograph, a little girl with his eyes and her mother's smile. Her name's Lily. She's everything to me. If I do this, if I help you, I need to know she'll be safe. That if something happens to me, someone will watch over her, like Ghost watched over you. I promise, on my father's grave, on my honor, if you help us, your daughter will always have protection. Thomas studied her face, looking for deception, for weakness. He must have found something he trusted because he nodded. What's the plan? Alina outlined it. They needed to get into Obsidian's operations center in North Carolina, extract their servers, get proof of the trafficking network. Names, dates, transactions, everything. Thomas could get them inside, could disable security systems, could give them access to the records. It's not that simple, Thomas said. The servers are air-gapped, no external connection. You'd need physical access, and the records are encrypted. You'd need their decryption keys, which are kept in the CEO's office. Clayton Briggs, he's the one running the operation, Sterling's protege. Can you get us the keys? Maybe, but even if I do, even if you get the data, you'll never make it out. The compound has 30 armed guards. Response time to any alarm is under 2 minutes. You'd be trapped. Alina smiled. It wasn't a warm expression. That's why we're not going in quiet. We're going loud. We're going to hit them so hard they won't know what happened until it's over. She explained the rest. Thomas would get them access, disable internal security. Once they were inside, Ghost would create a diversion, draw guards away from the server room. Alina would extract the data while Thomas got the encryption keys from Briggs's office. Then they'd extract, fast and clean. That's suicide, Thomas said. Maybe, but it's the only way to expose them, to get justice for my father, for all the people they've killed, for everyone who's suffered because of their weapons. You in or out? Thomas was silent for a long moment. Then, I'm in, But we do this my way. I know that facility. Know its weaknesses. We'll need support. Someone to handle extraction. Someone to take the data and get it to the right people if we don't make it out. I know someone, former Marine, Master Gunnery Sergeant Rodriguez, good man, trustworthy. They planned for an hour, working out details, timing, contingencies. When Thomas finally left, he looked 10 years older. The weight of what they were planning had settled on his shoulders. Alina understood. This wasn't just a mission. It was treason against the organization he worked for. But sometimes treason was the most honorable thing you could do. Ghost appeared 5 minutes later, slid into Thomas's empty chair. You trust him? Yeah, I do. He's got a daughter, wants to do right by her, wants to make sure she doesn't grow up ashamed of what her father did for a living. Ghost nodded. Your father would have liked him. He had a thing about protecting people who couldn't protect themselves. It's why he couldn't let Operation Greyhound go, couldn't stand by while Sterling's weapons killed innocent people. Alina looked at Ghost, this man who'd carried her father's memory for 2 decades. Did it ever get easier, the guilt? No, never. I see James every day. Every time I look at you, I see him. The guilt is always there, but so is the purpose, the reason to keep fighting. Your father died trying to do the right thing. I've lived trying to finish what he started. That has to mean something. It means everything. They left the coffee shop, split up. Alina went to a hotel room they'd rented under false names. Ghost went to coordinate with Rodriguez. The operation was set for 5 days out. 5 days to prepare, to plan, to accept that they might not survive. Alina spent those days training, staying sharp, but also thinking about her father, about the man he'd been. She'd found some of his letters, personal correspondence he'd written to Ghost over the years. They were in the files Ghost had showed her. Letters about missions, about doubts, about right and wrong. One letter stood out, written 3 months before he died. Ghost, I don't know how much longer I can do this. Every time I close my eyes, I see those weapons we photographed in Somalia. I see the people they've killed, the children caught in crossfire. Sterling's network is still operating. I have proof now, hard evidence, but I don't know who to trust. Too many people in power benefit from this. I'm going to take it to the IG, hopping it's enough. If anything happens to me, promise you'll watch over Alina, promise you'll teach her to be strong. To fight for what's right even when it costs everything. She's my world, Ghost, my reason for everything. Make sure she knows that. Alina read the letter 3 times. Her father had known he was in danger, had known he might die, but he'd moved forward anyway because it was the right thing to do. That was courage, not the absence of fear, but action despite fear, because some principles mattered more than safety. She was his daughter. She had that same courage in her blood. The night before the operation, Ghost came to her hotel room, brought the Remington 700. You'll need this tomorrow. Long-range overwatch. Thomas will get us in, but we'll need you covering our exit. Alina took the rifle, felt its familiar weight. What if something goes wrong? Then you complete the mission anyway. You get the data to Rodriguez. You make sure Obsidian burns. You don't mourn us. You don't stop. You finish it. That's cold. That's being an operator. Mission first. Always. That's what your father taught me. That's what I'm teaching you. They sat in silence for a while. Then Ghost spoke softly. I want you to know something. These past weeks, training you, planning with you, they've been the best weeks I've had in 20 years, because I'm not alone anymore, not carrying this weight by myself. Your father would be proud of you, not just for what you can do, for who you are, for your heart. Alina felt tears threaten, but she pushed them down. Tomorrow we finish this for him, for everyone Obsidian has hurt, for justice. For justice, Ghost agreed. He left her alone. Alina spent the rest of the night checking her gear, cleaning her weapons, preparing mentally. She thought about her father, about his last moments. Had he known it was coming? Had he thought of her? Of the little girl who'd never really gotten to know him? She touched his dog tags, made a silent promise. I'm coming for them, Dad, the people who killed you. The people who thought they could hide behind classifications and cover stories. Tomorrow they pay. The night passed slowly. When dawn came, Alina was ready. She dressed in tactical gear. Black, professional, no identification. If something went wrong, if she was captured, they couldn't trace her back to Ghost or Thomas. She looked in the mirror, barely recognized herself. The soft archivist was gone. This was someone else, someone harder, colder, more dangerous. This was a warrior. She met Ghost and Thomas at a warehouse outside of Charlotte. Rodriguez was there too, a compact Hispanic man with scars and kind eyes. He'd served with Ghost in the 90s, had connections, could get things done. This is it, Ghost said. Last chance to back out. No one moved. Then let's go finish a 21-year-old fight. They loaded into 2 vehicles, drove toward the Obsidian compound. Alina's heart rate was steady. Her hands were calm. She felt no fear, only purpose, only the cold certainty that what they were about to do was necessary. Somewhere ahead, in a secure facility surrounded by guards and weapons and corruption, the truth waited. The proof that would expose Obsidian, that would vindicate her father, that would bring justice to all the people who died because of Sterling's greed. Alina checked her rifle, chambered a round, looked through the scope at the road ahead. Sometimes truth doesn't knock politely. Sometimes it kicks down the door. What's the sound of justice? For Alina Brennan, it was the crack of a rifle at 900 yards. The Obsidian Solutions compound sat in a cleared section of North Carolina forest. 12-foot fence, guard towers, multiple buildings. It looked like a military base because that's essentially what it was. Private military, private army, private corruption. Alina was positioned on a hill 900 yards north, prone, concealed. The Remington 700 rocked steady in her hands. Through the scope she could see guards patrolling. Cameras, motion sensors. Thomas had been right. Getting in would be hard. Getting out might be impossible. Ghost's voice crackled in her earpiece. "Hawkeye, this is Ghost Leader. Radio check." Alina had chosen the call sign herself. Hawkeye. Her father's call sign had been Hawk. It felt right. "Ghost Leader, this is Hawkeye. I read you Lima Charlie." "Copy that. Thomas is initiating entry. Stand by." Alina watched through her scope. At the main gate, Thomas's vehicle approached. He had credentials, was expected. The guard checked his ID, waved him through. Phase 1 complete. Thomas was inside. "Hawkeye, we're moving to secondary position. ETA to breach, 10 minutes. "Copy. I have eyes on target building. 2 guards on the roof, 4 at ground level entrances. We'll handle ground level. You watch for reinforcements." Alina settled deeper into position, controlled her breathing, became one with the earth, with the rifle, with the moment. This was what her father had felt, this focus, this clarity. Everything else disappeared. There was only the target, the mission, the shot. 9 minutes passed, then Thomas's voice. "Security disabled, internal cameras looping, we're clear for breach." Ghost and Rodriguez moved from concealment, black tactical gear, no identification. They approached from the east side, where cameras were now blind. Thomas had done his job. Alina tracked them through the scope, watched them stack at a service entrance, watched the door open. They disappeared inside. Now came the hard part, waiting. Alina scanned the compound, looking for threats, problems. 2 guards on patrol, one smoking near a vehicle, another checking a fence line, normal security posture. No one suspected anything yet. "Entering server room," Ghost whispered. "Hawkeye status." "Clear, no changes in security posture." "Beginning data extraction. Thomas is moving to Briggs's office." Alina's heart rate stayed steady, but she felt the weight of the moment. Everything they'd trained for, everything they'd planned. It came down to this. A few minutes in a server room. getting evidence that could topple an empire of corruption. 3 minutes passed, 4, 5. Then everything went wrong. An alarm, loud, piercing. Alina saw red lights start flashing across the compound, guards moving, running, weapons drawn. Ghost leader, you've been compromised. Ghost's voice was tense but controlled. Copy. Thomas got the encryption keys but tripped a silent alarm. We're locked down in here, going to have to fight our way out. Alina saw guards converging on the main building. 8, 10, 12, too many. You've got multiple hostiles moving to your position. Acknowledged. Hawk's Eye, you're cleared hot. Take targets of opportunity. Alina's world narrowed. The scope, the targets, the calculation. First guard reached the building entrance. She led him slightly, accounted for wind, distance, squeezed. The rifle spoke. 3 seconds later the guard dropped, one down. She worked the bolt, chambered another round, found the next target, a guard on the roof. Taking position with a rifle, she adjusted for elevation, fired. The guard crumpled, 2 down. More guards appeared, running from other buildings. Alina became a machine. Calm, efficient, deadly, she'd trained for this. Had become her father's daughter in every way that mattered. Each shot was deliberate, perfect. Guards fell. 1, 2, 3. Inside the compound, she heard gunfire through her earpiece. Ghost and Rodriguez engaging, fighting their way toward an exit. Thomas with them, returning fire. Hawk's Eye, we need an exit route. South side clear. Alina swung her scope, checked the southern perimeter. 4 guards moving to block the exit. She took them, fast, efficient. The rifle sang its deadly song. 4 shots, 4 hits. South side clear, move now. Moving. But more guards kept coming. How many did this place have? Alina lost count. She just kept shooting, kept clearing a path. The rifle was hot. Her shoulder ached from recoil, but she didn't stop. A guard appeared with an RPG. Aiming at the building where Ghost was, Alina didn't hesitate, put a round through him before he could fire. The RPG fell, didn't detonate. Small mercy. Hawk's Eye, we're exiting the building. Do you have eyes on our position? Affirmative. 3 hostiles between you and the fence. I'm engaging. She fired, worked the bolt, fired again. 2 guards went down. The third dove for cover, smart. She waited, patient. He'd have to move eventually. There, he broke cover, tried to reposition. Alina led him, squeezed, he dropped. Path is clear, go. She watched Ghost, Rodriguez, and Thomas sprint across open ground, toward the fence, toward freedom. More guards appeared. Alina provided covering fire. Each shot bought them seconds, inches, life. They reached the fence. Rodriguez cut through with bolt cutters. They were through, running toward the tree line, almost free. Then Alina saw him, on a guard tower, setting up a machine gun, aiming at Ghost's back. She swung the rifle. It was over 1,000 yards. She'd never made a shot that far in combat, only once in training. Wind was tricky, angle was bad, but she had no choice. Alina did what her father would have done. She breathed in, let half out, held, calculated every variable, found the pause between heartbeats, squeezed. The rifle kicked. The sound echoed across the valley. 3 seconds felt like eternity. Then the guard on the tower pitched backward, hit, dead before he fell. Ghost leader, you're clear. Get to the extraction point. Copy. Hawk's Eye, egress now. You're compromised. Alina was already moving, breaking down her position, grabbing her gear. The compound was chaos behind her. Alarms, sirens, gunfire, but Ghost was right. She'd given away her position. They'd be coming for her. She ran through the forest, following the route they'd planned. Her lungs burned, legs ached, but she didn't stop, couldn't stop. Mission wasn't complete until everyone made it out. She reached the secondary extraction point, a clearing where Rodriguez had a vehicle waiting. Ghost was already there, Thomas too, both breathing hard, covered in sweat and blood, but alive. You hit? Alina asked. Not my blood, Ghost said. You. Clean. Rodriguez appeared. Vehicles ready, we need to move. Obsidian will have people looking for us. They loaded in. Rodriguez drove fast but not recklessly. They needed to put distance between themselves and the compound, but they also needed to not get pulled over by police. It was a delicate balance. Did you get it? Alina asked. The data. Thomas held up a hard drive. Everything, 20 years of transactions, communications, client lists, proof of weapons trafficking across 4 continents, plus the encryption keys. This will bury Obsidian. Alina felt something release in her chest. Relief. Vindication. They'd done it. Against impossible odds. Against professional killers and corrupt officials and an empire built on blood and lies. They'd gotten the evidence. Your father would be proud, Ghost said quietly. He'd be proud of all of us. We finished what he started. They drove for 3 hours, switched vehicles twice, finally arrived at a safe house in the mountains. Different location from Ghost's cabin, a place Rodriguez had prepared, secure, off the grid. Inside, Thomas plugged in the hard drive, started going through the data. His expression grew darker with each file he opened. This is worse than I thought. Obsidian isn't just trafficking weapons. They're facilitating conflicts, creating wars to generate demand. They've got politicians on payroll, generals, CIA officers. This goes all the way to the top. Alina looked at the files, saw her father's name, saw the orders for his assassination, saw the payments made to the contractors who'd killed him. 21 years of questions answered in cold, clinical language. Transaction records, kill orders, confirmation of completion. She should have felt something, rage, grief, something, but she just felt empty, like she'd climbed a mountain only to find nothing at the summit. We need to get this to the right people, Thomas said. Someone who can act on it, who can't be bought. I know someone, Alina said. Inspector General's office at Duty, woman named Patricia Morrison. She's built her career on exposing corruption, and she hates the CIA. Over the next week, they moved carefully, safe house to safe house, never staying more than 2 days. Thomas worked on organizing the evidence. Alina contacted Patricia Morrison through encrypted channels. Ghost healed from minor wounds he'd sustained during the extraction. 2 weeks after the operation, they met Morrison in a parking garage in Washington, D.C. She was 52, sharp-eyed, the kind of face that suggested she'd heard every lie and believed none of them. Thomas handed her the hard drive. Everything's indexed, transaction records, communications, client lists, 20 years of illegal arms trafficking. Morrison plugged the drive into her laptop. Her expression didn't change as she scrolled, but her fingers moved faster as she realized what she was seeing. This is genuine. Every byte, Thomas confirmed. This implicates CIA officers, Duty officials, members of Congress. She looked up. Do you understand what you're handing me? This will create a political firestorm. Good, Alina said. That's the point. Morrison studied her. You're James Brennan's daughter. I knew your father. He testified before a committee I was advising in 2001. Good man, honest man. She closed the laptop. I'll need you to testify, all of you. We'll do whatever it takes. The investigation moved quickly. Federal agents raided Obsidian Solutions headquarters, arrested 17 people, 3 CIA officers, 2 Duty contractors, multiple Obsidian employees. Clayton Briggs was found dead in his Alexandria home. Single gunshot to the head. Ruled suicide, though Alina suspected otherwise. Men like Briggs had contingencies. The media coverage was relentless. Decades-long arms trafficking operation exposed. CIA officers running criminal empire. Weapons from Cold War still fueling conflicts. Alina testified before Congress, told them everything about her father's murder, about Operation Greyhound, about the cover-up that had lasted 39 years. The investigation revealed that James Brennan had indeed been assassinated. The IED that killed him had been a sophisticated shaped charge, not the improvised device the official report claimed. Intelligence suggested it had been placed by contractors working for Briggs. 3 months after the initial raid, the military convened a special board. They reviewed James Brennan's death, reclassified it from killed in action to murdered in criminal conspiracy. The difference mattered. On a cold day in November, Eleanor stood at Arlington National Cemetery. A new headstone had been placed at her father's grave. Commander James Brennan, United States Navy SEAL, born 1953, died 2003, murdered while serving his country. His truth lives on. Ghost stood beside her. Thomas flanked them. A small crowd had gathered, former SEAL teammates of her father. A Navy honor guard performed a ceremony. 21 guns fired in salute. Taps played. An admiral presented Eleanor with a new flag, acknowledging the truth of her father's death. "Your father was one of the finest warriors I ever knew," the admiral said. "His courage extended beyond the battlefield. He fought for truth even when it cost him everything. That legacy now lives in you." After the ceremony, as the crowd dispersed, Eleanor knelt beside the grave. She removed the SEAL trident from her vest, placed it on the headstone next to fresh flowers. "We did it, Dad," she whispered. "The truth is out, your name is cleared, and the people responsible are paying for what they did." Ghost's hand rested gently on her shoulder. "He knows, and he's proud." They left the cemetery as the sun set, painting the white headstones gold and red. Eleanor's phone buzzed. A text from Patricia Morrison. "Final arrests made. Network dismantled. Justice served. Thank you." Eleanor showed the message to Ghost. He smiled. "So what now? You going back to being an archivist?" Eleanor thought about the past months. The training, the fighting, the rush of combat and the satisfaction of victory. She thought about all the classified files she'd seen, all the other operations that might have dark truths buried in them. "Actually, I've been offered a position. Duty Inspector General's office. Special investigator for historical corruption cases." She looked at Ghost. "Patricia wants someone who understands the military, who can dig through archives and also handle themselves in the field. She said I'm uniquely qualified." "You are, but that's not a quiet life. That's choosing to keep fighting." "I know." Eleanor touched the dog tags at her neck. "Dad chose to fight. You chose to fight. Now it's my turn. There are more buried truths, more families without answers, more criminals hiding behind classifications and cover stories." Ghost was quiet for a long moment. "You'll need help, someone to watch your back, train you further, keep you from getting killed." "Are you volunteering?" "I'm an old dog, but I'm not ready to stop hunting yet," he smiled. "Besides, I made your father a promise to watch over you, teach you everything he would have taught you. I'm not done keeping that promise." They drove back to Oregon together, to the cabin in the Cascade Mountains. Over the next months, Eleanor's training continued. 700 yards became 800. 800 became 900. By spring, she could consistently hit targets at 1,000 yards. Her pistol time dropped below 1.8 seconds. Her close-quarters combat skills sharpened until she could clear the kill house faster than Ghost himself. And when Patricia Morrison called with a new case, something involving weapons smuggling in the Balkans and suspicious deaths of American contractors, Eleanor was ready. She stood at the shooting range on a clear morning. The Remington 700 pressed against her shoulder. The target was 1,175 yards away, an impossible shot by most standards. But Eleanor had stopped believing in impossible. She breathed in, exhaled halfway, held, calculated wind, temperature, elevation, felt her heartbeat slow, found the pause between beats, squeezed. 3 seconds later, the spotter scope showed a perfect hit, dead center. Ghost lowered his binoculars. 1,175 yards, dead center. That's a new record. Your father's best was 1,150. Aliner worked the bolt, chambered another round. Think he'd be proud. I think James Brennan is somewhere right now, watching his daughter become everything he hoped she'd be and everything he feared she'd need to be. Ghost smiled. And yeah, he's proud. So damn proud. Aliner looked through her scope at the distant mountains. Somewhere out there, more truths waited to be uncovered, more corruption to be exposed, more battles to be fought. She was Aliner Brennan, daughter of a Navy SEAL, student of a legend, warrior in her own right. And she was just getting started. The rifle spoke again. Another target fell. The sound echoed across the valley like a promise, like a warning to those who thought they could hide their crimes behind classifications and cover stories. The truth had a new champion, and she had her father's eyes, her mentor's training, and a fury that would never be contained again. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts.